Our world is teeming with incredible things, and among the most fascinating are animals. They roam the skies, the land, the depths of the seas, and everywhere in between. Unlike humans, their sizes can sometimes grow to astonishing proportions, so much so that they make us wonder if we're living in prehistoric times rather than the modern era. From a newly discovered car-sized prawn species to a bizarre creature that washed up on a beach, here are 20 enormous creatures caught on camera. Number 20. Blue whale. Now, if I'm going to talk about the biggest animals ever caught on camera, then I absolutely should be talking about the largest mammal or animal in our world, which is the blue whale. Now, to be clear, there are technically things longer than this whale, but in terms of pure size and bulk, well, it just doesn't get bigger than this. That's right, the blue whale comes out on top every single time. Not the least of which is because they can be about 100 feet in length at times, if not longer, based on unconfirmed reports, and weigh anywhere up to 199 tons. Some of the biggest individuals may eat up to 6 tons of krill per day. That's a lot of fish. Blue whales are found in all oceans except the Arctic, and there are 5 currently recognized subspecies of blue whales, which is great except for one major problem that you all likely know about in regards to whales in general. The number of blue whales today is only a small fraction of what it was before modern commercial whaling significantly reduced their numbers during the early 1900s. But populations are increasing globally. The primary threats blue whales currently face are vessel strikes and entanglements in fishing gear. While there have been various whaling laws enacted by countries all over the years, that hasn't stopped them from happening under the guise of being official government business or just being done illegally by poaching. If these whales are lost due to poaching, it's not just a major loss for the oceans, it's a major loss for the world as a whole. Number 19. Deep sea dragon. A deep-sea diver sparked an underwater mystery after discovering a giant skeleton that no one could identify at the time. Footage taken in 2017 from a remote-operated vehicle, some 830 meters below sea level, shows a large set of bones, which includes a seemingly intact spinal column measuring a massive 30 meters in length. The mysterious skeleton has come to light after the diver operating the underwater robot sent the footage to paranormal researcher Deborah Hatswell, clearly feeling that there could be a spooky explanation behind the bones. The diver who first spotted the mystery remains thinks that, based on his previous discoveries, it could have far more ancient origins. Now, that may seem a little basic given the bones themselves, but you do need to remember a very basic thing about the world. We don't know about all the creatures that live in it right now, and certainly not about the ones that live back in prehistoric times. Remember, we often learn about creatures from the past via the fossil record. However, not all creatures leave fossils, and just because they do leave them doesn't mean we'll find them in good time. As a result, this deep-sea dragon, as some like to call it, might be a remnant from a very old creature, one that hasn't been discovered yet, or it could be that it actually is from a creature that we know about but just don't have all the pieces to realize it. Chalk this one up to another mystery of the ocean. Number 18. Acapulco beach creature. It's a well-known fact of life that sometimes creatures of the deep don't get found by people in the waters of the world. Rather, they just tend to wash up on the shore and boggle everyone's mind because they had no idea that such a creature ever existed before. That's honestly how things like the oarfish and squids were discovered. In this raw video from Civil Protection and Fire Acapulco, which lasts a little over a minute and a half, an unidentified observer is seen prodding a very large, mysterious creature with a stick. As the observer continues to check it over, the mysterious creature lying on the sand does not appear to move or even respond to being prodded. After being examined a little more, it's said to be about 13 feet long and definitely had bones, meaning that it was not a remnant of something non-living but indeed a creature that was alive before washing up. An official said that the creature had spent a long time floating in the strong currents caused by bad weather, which brought it to the shore. Now, before you have a panic about what might wash up on your shore, 9.5 out of 10 of these creatures are just dead ones that have been decomposed or malformed by the oceans, such as when a whale will die, get washed up, and is in a bloated state to the extent that you can't even tell what it is anymore. And that was more likely the case in this one. Number 17. Giant oarfish. Now, we actually mentioned the oarfish earlier, but I'll go into more depth with it here. When the first oarfish washed up on the shores of our world, a lot of people thought it was a hoax, mainly because it had a very bony body and was more serpent-like than any other fish or ocean creature that anyone had seen at the time. But as they would examine it, they realized that it was, in fact, very real. The real shock, though, was that later on, everyone learned that these creatures love to dwell deep within the oceans of the world, and as a result, it's honestly a bit of a miracle when they do wash up on the shore because they honestly really shouldn't. However, we do see them every once in a while, and sometimes we even see them when they're alive. In fact, a giant 15-foot oarfish would be spotted in the Sea of Cortez near Baja California. While we've seen them, though, to study them is a different matter altogether, as these deep-sea fish like to keep to themselves, and thus we only know just a few things about them. For example, the oarfish has a very strict diet where they primarily feed on zooplankton, along with selectively taking part in shrimp and other crustaceans from the water. Small fish, jellyfish, and squid are also food for these oarfish, and large open ocean carnivores are all likely predators, though we obviously don't know which ones for sure as of this moment. Number 16. Human-sized jellyfish. When most people picture a jellyfish, they picture something that's small yet stingy that can be found all over the world. But what people often forget is that one of the reasons they're so dangerous in the oceans is that they can grow to an impressive size, as one diver would find out. This incredible creature, a barrel jellyfish, would be spotted near Falmouth by broadcaster and biologist Lizzie Daly, who described the encounter as breathtaking. Daly, who was exploring the waters as part of her campaign Wild Ocean Week, added that the jellyfish was as big as she was. Barrel jellyfish are the largest species of jellyfish in British seas, but it's extremely rare to spot one the size that Daly did. These things typically grow to be up to 3.2 feet in length, but as she would note, it was as big as she was and obviously a lot larger when you take it from a mass and roundness perspective. Thankfully, this wasn't the kind of jellyfish that stings people just for being near them. And if you're thinking that this is the biggest jellyfish out there in the world, you would be wrong, as that one goes to the lion's mane jellyfish, growing up to 120 feet long with bells up to 8 feet wide. The lion's mane jelly is the largest known jelly species out there. They can have up to 1,200 tentacles, which originate from under the bell in 8 distinct clusters of 70 and 150 tentacles each. So yeah, just imagine swimming next to that thing. You wouldn't be able to tell where it ended given its length. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. A recent Reddit post has taken the internet by storm, featuring what is claimed to be a groundbreaking discovery by Australian deep-sea divers. According to the divers, they stumbled upon an enormous prawn-like creature lurking in the unexplored depths of the ocean. What makes this find truly extraordinary? The prawn, if you can still call it that, was reportedly the size of a small car. The image you see here is based on their description: a creature with razor-sharp claws, an exoskeleton that glints like polished armor, and terrifyingly sharp teeth. The divers reported that it moved with a menacing grace, its many legs propelling it effortlessly through the darkness of the ocean floor. Marine biologists speculate that this could be an undiscovered giant amphipod species, or a freak mutation caused by environmental changes in deep-sea ecosystems. Others, however, are skeptical, calling it an exaggerated fisherman's tale or, perhaps, an elaborate hoax designed to grab internet fame. Could such a monstrous prawn exist, challenging everything we know about deep-sea biodiversity? While some dismiss it as internet fiction, others are fascinated, wondering what else might be lurking in the uncharted waters of our planet. What's your take? Hoax or horrifying reality? Number 15. Cassowary. Birds are honestly one of the most diverse creatures out there in the world in terms of size and capabilities. Just think about it. You can have a bird as small as a hummingbird that has to flap its wings thousands of times in a few seconds to keep aloft, or you can have something like an ostrich, a 9-foot bird that can run as fast as a car at some points. And just like other creatures, the bigger the bird, the bigger the danger, which is proven very easily with the cassowary. The cassowary is one of the biggest land birds out there, behind the ostrich and the emu. The difference, though, is that while those other two birds could hurt you if you provoke them, the cassowary is actually able to kill you with ease due to its claws, and it's killed multiple times over the years, including one man in Florida. This happened in Gainesville, and apparently the man that was killed by the bird was its own owner. Now, he fell, and the cassowary acted upon that opportunity and took his life. There's a reason why people in cassowary territory know to give this bird a wide berth. They don't want to risk getting on its bad side. Now, if you want further proof of the body of evidence of cassowaries, the San Diego Zoo's website calls them the world's most dangerous bird, with a 10-centimeter dagger-like claw on each foot. Number 14. Giant Pacific octopus. When it comes to the creatures of the deep, two that fascinate me and also terrify me even more than anything else in the world are the octopus and the squid, mainly because they're creatures that have unique qualities and forms. And the giant Pacific octopus is a great example of that. The giant Pacific octopus grows bigger and lives longer than any other octopus species. A size record is held by a specimen that was 30 feet across and weighed more than 600 pounds. Averages are more like 16 feet and 110 pounds, but that still makes it an impressively sized creature and one that is much larger than humans in terms of length, if not weight. Another curious element of these creatures is that while they are rather large, they don't actually live that long. Their average lifespan is about 4 years, which is really short when you compare it to other fish in the sea, pun intended. Tying into that is that the females of the species live just long enough to give birth to children, and then they soon die afterward. Not exactly the most fulfilling life now, is it? Well, you might want to hold off on that because while they may die after childbirth, they apparently lay a whole lot of eggs, up to 120,000 and 400,000 eggs. Yeah, you heard that right. Talk about growing a family in a hurry. Given all those numbers, it's honestly a little bit odd that we don't see more octopuses out in the ocean. Number 13. Giant oceanic manta ray. From one of the curious creatures in the water, we now go on to talk about one that people love to be up close to, the giant oceanic manta ray. But why is this one so special? Well, first and foremost, it's incredibly friendly to humans, and that's why people are able to get a lot of footage of the creature. The other big thing is that these are truly gigantic ocean creatures. Apparently, they can reach a width of up to 29 feet, which is over 4 times the size of an average human. You'd be dwarfed by this manta if you found one in the ocean. For many decades, there was only one known species, but scientists have recently divided that species into 2, the giant manta ray, which is a more oceanic species, and the reef manta ray, which is more coastal in nature. Remember how I said that they're friendly, though? Well, that also applies to how they eat because they're what's known as filter feeders. Unlike the mighty whale shark, these creatures constantly swim along with their large mouths open, filtering plankton and other small food from the water. And to aid in this strategy, giant mantas have specialized flaps known as cephalic lobes, which help direct more water and food into their mouths. So, you're honestly in no danger if you do meet one in the waters of the world, but do be careful just in case because that big old body could still end up hurting you. Number 12. Downtown Jacksonville Dinosaur. As you might have already guessed, the video's not exactly what you'd be expecting right off the bat, obviously, because if there was a dinosaur out there in the world right now, it'd be one of the biggest news stories of the century, if not the entire millennium. But that's obviously not the case, despite the raw footage of the video you're watching now. Because, in fact, what's going on is that the Jacksonville Zoo decided to make their own dinosaur exhibit by bringing the creatures back to life via the DNA of insects. And oh, that's Jurassic Park. What they really did was make lifelike animatronic dinosaurs so that they could showcase what they would have been like back in prehistoric times, as well as bring in all sorts of interesting things to their zoo. This longer video goes into greater detail about their animated dinosaurs and what they are, who they were back in prehistoric times, and more. Now, while it's not what many people would likely have hoped to see in terms of found footage of a dinosaur, we should all probably be grateful that dinosaurs are extinct. After all, most of them towered over humans and had bodies that could wreck things like cars and buildings. And would you want a triceratops or a T-Rex going and raging around on your street? I didn't really think so. So, just go and settle for the zoo stuff and we'll go from there. Number 11. 30-foot anaconda. Snakes are something that are absolutely around you more than you'd like to think about, depending on where you live. And depending on your area and location, you might have to deal with big snakes or even venomous ones and so forth. So, you definitely want to be mindful of that, such as is the story that almost seems too good to be true, despite it being caught on camera. Brazilian construction workers were blown away when a slithering serpent wound up on their site. A snake on a work site is honestly never a good thing, as that can cause panic and disruption. But now imagine that happening with a massive snake, as was the case in this one. The snake was reportedly 33 feet long and weighed nearly 900 pounds. Workers were then forced to use a crane to lift it out of the construction site so that they could get back to work. Now, there are some things to note here, including that the video may have not been entirely truthful in various ways. Not the least of which is that some believe that this is actually a video from Indonesia and not Brazil. Not to mention, the snake is much larger than most anacondas out there. Are there even 30-plus foot snakes out there in the world? Well, yeah, but they're a rarity. This is why you don't always believe what you see on the internet because it might come back to haunt you if you're not careful. Number 10. Brutus the croc. When it comes to crocodiles, they're known for being big and heavy creatures that people can't help but film for one reason or another. And if they get eaten due to that, well, chalk it up to natural selection. It's easy to go and film a small croc. You can find those at the zoo. But when it comes to a beast like Brutus, that's a completely different story. You'll find him located in the Adelaide River in Queensland, Australia. He's 18 feet long, which is only a few feet shorter than the largest croc ever spotted. And what's more, Brutus has apparently been around for a while, even been seen in the area for over 30 years. That should tell you multiple things about these crocodiles, but the biggest one of them all is simple. It's that you don't screw with them ever, because should you be dumb enough to do that, you're going to be croc food in the end. Number 9. Atlas moth. When it comes to creatures like moths and butterflies, they have a way of surviving that focuses not on their actions per se but on their looks. Their wings are colored and shaped in such ways that they can deceive predators into thinking that there's something much more dangerous and thus to be left alone. One of the most surprising of the set to do this is the Atlas moth because it's one of the biggest moths out there, with a wingspan that can measure 9.4 inches in length. But what's really impressive about it is the pattern that it grows into in order to fool predators. If you look closely at its wings, you're going to notice that they resemble a very different kind of creature, a snake. That's right, their wings look like snakes. So, when they're on a tree, they'll look like snakes that are wrapped around it, and most creatures aren't going to dare to approach them out of instinct alone. That just goes to show you that sometimes you only need to look scary instead of be scary for things to leave you be. Number 8. Knickers. Now, I want you to picture a cow. Picture your favorite cow. Maybe it's a cow that you drive by, a cow in a pasture. What does that cow look like to you? Well, think about one that you may have seen in the news when they interviewed a farmer or one that you met in person. Just picture it, specifically about how big that cow was. The reason you're doing that is because in Australia, there's a cow that will defy all logic, expectations, and any kind of image that you may have formed in your mind, and its name is Knickers. I'll leave the obvious joke alone here and just move on. Western Australian man and Lake Preston owner Jeff Pearson reared the 7-foot-tall, 1,400-kilogram steer named Knickers on his property and told the news that because of his size, they couldn't sell him for export. Now, I've got a little bit of trouble believing that because that would mean that no one would find a way to get this cow. Trust me, when it comes to getting something for a collection, life just seems to find a way regardless. Could you actually imagine standing next to a cow that's nearly 7 feet tall? Not long, but tall. Granted, it's only about 6'4" in actuality, but that's still a tall cow. Think about what it's like to milk that thing, then hope that it doesn't lie down on you and crush you to death. Could you even imagine what it would be like if all cows were this big? It would be utter chaos. Number 7. Giant Amazon leech. Leeches, well, they suck literally and metaphorically. They're not exactly a creature that you'd want on you at any time, but why? Well, because they suck. But if you want to know where the biggest ones on Earth can be found, and why would you, that would be in the Amazon, another place where all sorts of magical things happen. The giant Amazonian leech is one that's so big and terrifying, it can grow to be 18 inches long. But the worst part? They were believed to be extinct for decades until 2 more were found. And then, when one female was studied, it ended up giving birth to over 700 of these little monsters. So yeah, don't go near the areas where this thing lives, and you can thank me later. Number 6. Giant walking stick. The giant walking stick is the largest of all North American walking sticks, measuring somewhere between 7.5 centimeters and 15 centimeters. That's about 3 to 6 inches in length. Walking sticks, in general, have bodies that resemble the shape and usually the color of sticks, twigs, or branches from a tree. The reason for this is hopefully very obvious. After all, if you saw a stick on a branch that stuck out a little, would you even care or possibly even notice it to begin with? More than likely not, and that's what the giant walking stick is banking on. It looks as harmless as possible so that predators may not notice it but leave it alone because they'll think it's just a piece of wood. What makes the giant walking stick even more fascinating is its ability to sway gently as if moved by the wind, adding to its convincing disguise. They are masters of camouflage and often blend seamlessly into their surroundings, making them almost impossible to spot in the wild. Some species of walking sticks can even regenerate lost legs over time, which is a remarkable survival adaptation. Additionally, these insects are primarily herbivorous, feeding on leaves and causing minimal harm to the environment. Of course, there's a trade-off to all of this, the biggest part of it being that they're rather slow, and due to their wooden frame, they can be a bit fragile. So, if you do see one, you can observe it, but you should absolutely leave it alone in terms of touch. Number 5. Capybara. Pop quiz. Folks, what is a capybara? You might have seen one up close if you're in the right spot, but what are they exactly? Capybaras are, in fact, the largest rodent in the world today. But don't worry, you don't have to worry about an invasion of them or have them behave like rats because they're honestly much better than that. These impressive semi-aquatic mammals are found throughout much of northern and central South America, though a small invasive population has been seen in Florida. They act a lot like beavers at points in that they prefer to swim around, complete with their webbed feet. Interestingly, capybaras can stay underwater for up to 5 minutes, a trait they often use to evade predators like jaguars and caimans. Their diet consists mostly of grass and aquatic plants, and they have a unique digestive system that allows them to extract maximum nutrients from their fibrous meals. They also have a habit of chewing on their own droppings to aid in digestion, a practice that might not be glamorous but is surprisingly effective. Despite their docile and friendly demeanor, they can become surprisingly territorial during mating season, particularly the dominant males. But an irony of these creatures is that despite them being rodents, they actually make good pets and are very social creatures. Though apparently, they're so social that you're going to need to get 2 of them just so they always have someone to interact with. Number 4. Giant Gippsland earthworm. Now, if you've never heard of the giant Gippsland earthworm, you don't need to worry about it too much. This one is only found in small areas of South and West Gippsland, Victoria, so thus, if you don't live there, you're not even within range to actually find it. The reason you're hearing about it now, though, is that it is one of the largest earthworms in the world, often exceeding 1 meter in length. That's one really long worm. However, if the worm is that large, how is it that it's a special thing to be seen on camera? Well, that's because they really do love to live underground and rarely come out of their earthly homes. Despite their size, they can be surprisingly elusive, with their presence often only detected by the faint gurgling sounds they make as they move through moist soil. Their lifespan is equally impressive, as they can live up to 5 years, provided their habitats remain undisturbed. The worms play a critical role in the ecosystem by aerating the soil and contributing to nutrient cycling, making them essential for local plant life. Conservationists have highlighted the need to protect their natural habitats from urban development and farming activities, which threaten their survival. Just as bad, their frames are a bit delicate, aren't we all? And thus, if you even try to handle one of these worms, you could do some damage to it. It's also a species that dies in captivity and isn't really suitable for captive breeding, and that makes it even more important to preserve and maintain the populations of this worm. So, don't worm your way out of your responsibilities, will you? Number 3. Coconut crab. When it comes to crabs, they're honestly rather small creatures, and for good reason. They don't need to be big in order to survive. But there are 2 species that do stand out from the pack as giants, and one of them is the coconut crab. To be clear, this isn't the biggest crab by pure length, but in terms of mass, the thing is a beast. This massive crustacean can grow to be as much as 9 pounds and 3 feet in length. That may not seem like a whole lot at first. However, when you approach one, you're going to be backing up sooner rather than later. What's even more unsettling is their incredible strength. Their claws can exert up to 740 pounds of force, making them capable of snapping bones or breaking through tough shells with ease. They're nocturnal hunters, often scouring the ground for food, and occasionally stealing shiny objects from unsuspecting humans, earning them the nickname robber crabs. These creatures have a lifespan of up to 60 years, giving them plenty of time to perfect their skills as master scavengers. Additionally, their ability to survive both on land and in the water makes them a unique and formidable species in their ecosystem. They're called the coconut crab because they can climb up trees and use their massive claws to crush coconuts. They can also kill and eat birds, and even humans would get hurt or even possibly killed if they screw with them. So, do everyone a favor. Keep an eye on this crab from a distance because if you get too close, you'll reveal that you're coconuts yourself. Number 2. Giant African land snail. The giant African land snail is a perfect example of why certain creatures need to be left alone in their own habitats and not be brought to different parts of the world. Because while it's true that they can make good pets if you're smart, they can also be an invasive species that can decimate certain ecosystems. And if you don't believe me, just ask Florida. They had an invasion of these things, and it took 10 years to get rid of them. These snails don't just multiply rapidly, they also consume a wide variety of plants, including crops, which makes them a nightmare for farmers. Beyond their dietary destruction, they can also carry parasites harmful to humans, such as the rat lungworm, which can cause meningitis if transmitted. Additionally, their hardy shells and ability to thrive in various climates make them particularly difficult to eradicate once they establish a population. Efforts to control them often involve extensive public awareness campaigns and strict quarantines to prevent further spread. One of the largest terrestrial snails, full-grown adults can reach almost 8 inches long and 5 inches in diameter. And the reason they can be invasive is that they can lay about 1,200 eggs a year. So yeah, you should probably keep them away from your territory. Number 1. Komodo dragon. While it's true that the fantasy version of a dragon doesn't exist in the world today, for better and for worse, there are things out there that can embody what a dragon might be in a realistic setting, and the Komodo dragon is a perfect example of that. They're the biggest lizards in the world today and are so large that they can actually dwarf a human, as they can reach over 10 feet in length and weigh over 300 pounds. Just as bad, they also have a venomous bite. Ooh, ouch. Their venom contains a potent mix of toxins that prevent blood clotting, causing their prey to bleed out quickly and collapse from shock. Komodo dragons are notorious for their ambush hunting tactics, often stalking their prey for hours before delivering a swift and deadly bite. Once they've bitten their target, they use their powerful sense of smell to track the injured animal, sometimes from several miles away. Interestingly, their saliva contains over 50 strains of bacteria, making infections in their bite wounds almost inevitable. Despite their fearsome reputation, Komodo dragons are surprisingly vulnerable to habitat loss and human activity, leading to their classification as an endangered species. Komodo dragons are large lizards with long tails, strong and agile necks, and sturdy limbs. This makes them the apex predators of the island that they're on and a very powerful and aggressive species that has to be seen to truly be believed. Granted, they don't actually breathe fire and can't fly, which personally disappoints me, but they are still as close to dragons as you're going to get on this planet. That is, until someone makes one in a genetic experiment, and we all die soon after in a colossal invasion of them. That's it for today's journey into the world of massive animals. Were you surprised by some of these sightings of giant creatures? Which ones shocked you that people believed were real, even though they most definitely were not? Do you know of another large animal that should have made our list? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to check out the other cool videos on the screen, and I'll see you next time.